Golden Glass, a Lego Monkey Kid fanfiction written by Jukebox Straws, read by Jukebox Straws. Chapter 3, Noodles. Even the day after Kai thought about the kiss, Macaque had left soon afterwards, both simians needing their own space to process everything that just happened. "You'll come back, right?" Kai had asked. Macaque's ear had twitched, and he smiled. "I promise," he had said. Kai's therapist side was ecstatic. This was a breakthrough, after all. But the other side of them, the side that they had always hidden, the side that they didn't want to think about. They stood in front of the mirror, the mid-morning sun shining through their bedroom window. Kaigo sat on the bed, licking his paw absent-mindedly. Kai stared at the scars on their chest. They pressed their hands over their pectorals, feeling how flat they were. They'd always wanted this. They'd finally had the body they dreamed of for years. So now why did they suddenly feel so empty? Kai closed their eyes and imagined Macaque. As they ran their hands over their chest again, they imagined they were his hands. They imagined sharing this apartment with Macaque, sharing everything with Macaque. Suddenly they found themselves craving something that they hadn't in a long time. Companionship, friendship. Kai found themselves craving love. Kai laid themselves down on the bed, imagining the soft sheets warm by the sun to be the warm fur and skin of the dark-haired simian. They continued to run their hands over themselves, fingers ghosting over sensitive sides, shoulders, neck, tousling copper-brown hair, removing their glasses slowly. They suddenly found themselves imagining how Macaque would be in bed. Would he be rough and dominant, gentle and submissive, or maybe a mixture of the two? It nearly made Kai giddy, almost embarrassingly so. Macaque. Kai slowly pressed a flat palm to their stomach, fingers teasing the waistband of bright red underwear. Kai hadn't done this in a long time. They had closed off from nearly all sexual activity ever since that day, the day they realized they'd been used as a booty call for nearly 3 years. They remembered the days when they didn't let him take whatever he wanted. They would go out to dinner or a movie first before getting to said event. He would complain and look at his watch the whole time, not so silently indicating to Kai exactly what he had shown up for. But Macaque was different. Macaque wasn't like that. Though Macaque's emotional baggage was quite similar to Kai's own, he was still kind underneath his rugged exterior. Beneath the armor, beneath the pain, beneath the blood, sweat, and tears of everything he went through. And Kai got to see it. Was probably the first in a long time to ever see it. That thought nearly made them gasp as their hand, no, Macaque's hand, slipped under the waistband. They climaxed to the thought of Macaque's hand gripping their wrists tight, the other hand working its wonders and making them squeal. Session 31. I have learned that the 6-eared macaque is not a villain. He is a kind soul who has been horribly wronged by someone who was just as naive as he was. In turn, he has been able to help me work through my own issues regarding my past experiences with romance. As unprofessional as this sounds, I have fallen in love with my patient. I don't think we will be continuing our therapy sessions. I think we will now work through our problems together, as a team. Macaque knocked on the door. He held a bouquet of flowers in his hand and nervously picked at the plastic wrapping. Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe he should just leave. Maybe he had overstepped. The door opened, and he went stiff. Kai was just finishing putting on their bathrobe, believing the early knock to be a package of some sort. "Oh, Macaque!" Kai blushed and pulled the robe further around themselves. "I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "Here." Macaque held out the flowers. Kai blushed even more. "Are those? They're for you. I'm sorry if I overstepped last night. He sighed. "I hated seeing you upset, I guess. I wanted to make you feel better, but I don't know if I made it worse, or..." He scratched the back of his neck. "Oh, Macaque." Kai smiled softly, taking the flowers and sniffing them gently. "Thank you. This is the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me." They began to tear up. I was wondering..." Macaque wrung his hands together, pulling on his scarf. "Did you want to maybe Get dinner? I know a really good noodle shop. I can get us a discount. Kai smiled wide. I would love that, Macaque. Kai quickly got dressed, and they left the apartment together, heading in the direction of Pigsy's Noodles. Welcome to Pigsy's Oh, it's you. The pig demon behind the counter narrowed his eyes at the dark-furred simian. He glared back, a playful smirk on his face. Macaque! MK ran into the shop, empty to-go boxes in his arms. He smiled wide. Hey, kiddo. Macaque gave a half-hearted wave as he took a seat at the counter. Kai sat next to him and looked at the menu. Hello, Dr. Jin. MK greeted politely as he set the boxes on the counter. Hello, MK, they smiled. How's the therapy coming along? MK asked the shadow monkey. Macaque grinned. Actually, I think it's working. He gave Kai a small, joking nudge. They blushed a bit, though it went unnoticed by the monkey kid. See, I told you, MK smirked confidently. You just needed to talk things out. So you think you and Monkey King can stand in a room together for 5 minutes without arguing? Let's not stretch it, bud, Macaque joked. MK smiled and quickly went into the kitchen to put the boxes in their proper spots. Kai and Macaque both each ordered their own bowl of noodles while they made small talk in the noodle shop. It was fairly busy, so the white noise was easily lost on MK and Tang, who were quite the ones for gossip. Macaque was relieved at that. They talked and ate bowl after bowl of noodles as an excuse to stay just a little longer, but of course the shop had to close, and Macaque and Kai were promptly kicked out by a very cranky and tired Pigsy. They laughed a bit as they began to walk down the street back to Kai's apartment. This was new for Kai, the conversation. When they had gone out for dinners with him, they would do all the talking, and he would respond with the occasional grunt or nod of acknowledgement. When he did speak, it was either a snide remark about something not related to the topic, or a reminder that they still hadn't had sex that night. They liked the new change of pace. They reached out and took the shadow demon's hand. Macaque looked at them, his cheeks nearly as red as the markings around his eyes. Why don't we both go back to my place? Kai suggested. Macaque gulped. Sure, I can go for that. They made it back to Kai's apartment without much trouble. Does this mean now that you want to... Kai couldn't help it. It was instinctual. Their last relationship went like this, and while they knew better than to think of Macaque as anything like him, well... No, we don't have to if you don't want to. Macaque could see the obvious hesitation. The tension in Kai's spine loosened a little. We can watch a movie first? They suggested instead. Macaque smiled and sat on the couch. I think that's a good idea, he said as Kai sat next to him. As perverted as it sounded, Macaque had thought about it. Thought about his doctor in such a way, pinning them to the bed and having his way with them. But after the revelation from yesterday, he wasn't sure if his fantasy would ever come true. Until Kai rested their hand on his thigh once the movie's third act had begun. He froze and blinked, staring at the screen but not really seeing any of the actors. His fur lifted as he shivered, a tingling warmth snaking down his spine and dressed in the pit of his stomach. Are you sure? He whispered. Kai leaned their head against his shoulder, breath barely ghosting over his neck. I wouldn't if it were anyone else, they said simply. For once, Macaque felt hesitant. He couldn't remember the last time he shook so much. Kai's hand slid into his own, fingers curling around his. Macaque was pulled off the couch and down the hallway towards the bedroom. His heart began to beat faster, and his tail swished excitedly with the anticipation of a lovely night ahead. Kai was panicking, but in a good way, they supposed. Finally, their fantasies would come to fruition, but at what cost? Doubts wriggled their way into the doctor's mind. Was this really happening? Macaque was speaking. Shouldn't we have, a word or something? He asked awkwardly. Do you think we should have one? Kai asked, blushing a bit as they sat on the bed. Macaque stood in front of them, clutching his scarf. Noodles? Noodles, then. To be continued in Chapter 4.